Good luck, have fun, or good game. Chances are you've much more likely than not heard both of these before if you've participated in any team game, sport, or any form of competition. Football, American or not, t-ball, chess, MOBAs, whatever. Competition in general, it's something that seems to be a part of the human condition. What with over 100 million players on just League of Legends due to our innate love as humans for competition. Almost as much as we love to argue. And us versus them mentality tends to, more often than not, spawn from it. Dead by Daylight does this a lot because of the base nature of an asymmetrical game. In most games, if your opponent is using something that's unfair, usually you can just use the exact same thing as them. But a killer can't run exhaustion perks, nor can a survivor play nurse. These roles have entirely different skill sets with no real overlap. And only playing one side will lead to an incredibly distorted view of how hard each role can be. And while it's different than the classic example of kids playing t-ball or something like that, there's a fundamental misunderstanding of what this sportsmanship is in Dead by Daylight. While, yes, in a narrow sense, good game does apply to the hope that everyone has a good time playing, that is not inherently the only part of what sportsmanship is meant to be. To me, at least, and how I've always understood it, sportsmanship is a mindset where you're meant to treat your competitors with respect. That means not cheating, not mistreating your opponent, but respecting their same desire to play the same game that you do, and having an appreciation for them as their existence and even their opposition to you in-game allows you to actually play the game. Have you ever tried to play a full game of baseball by yourself? Physically, it is impossible. That's kind of what Dead by Daylight players struggle with a lot. You can complain about tactics that maybe aren't seen as fair, be it perk design, killer design, play styles. We'd be here all day to cover them, but I'm obviously not saying that you need to enjoy every aspect of a game you play. Maybe you don't like it that the goalie can use their hands in soccer, but it would kind of suck to play goalie if you weren't able to catch the ball with how big the goal is. Sportsmanship. It's all about treating your opponent with respect in victory and in defeat. Maybe I'm harping on a point, but the entire idea of GG is about that respect. It's not necessarily about your own personal performance. Some games you hit three-pointers all game, and sometimes the ball bounces off the rim and hits you in the forehead. A lot of Dead by Daylight players don't seem to get that you simply can't win 100% of your games, where the devs have said that, on average, they want killers to be balanced around a 60% kill rate. Not speaking on any of their actual kill rates, but that is the general rule set that's made for the game. So on average, unless you are an above average player, you will be dying as a survivor around 60% of your games, which is fine because that's the team role. Killer is different due to the asymmetry of it all, and on average, the developers want a killer to get 2.4 kills a game, 60%. Inherently, the game's not going to be perfectly balanced. We've played the game, but the devs do try. I'm not immune to complaining about these things either, believe me. I haven't even really played Dead by Daylight in about a month because of a combination of things, like making a video on how I'd fix my killer and another one about the problems I have with DBD, but the main thing that inspired me to make this video specifically was this. I've been keeping a counter for games that have had people give up in them, just because I noticed a lot of people quitting for seemingly no reason. This, of course, doesn't keep track of reasons that people disconnect or run at the killer so they can get out of the game, as I can't message every anonymous Ace Visconti and ask them why they quit against me, but here are the numbers. Out of the last 75 normal matches that I played, only 44 of them were played out in their entirety from start to finish without someone giving up. For context, I play Nemesis. He's not a particularly strong killer, ranging roughly in the middle of the pack from B to C tier, depending on how good you are at him, but he'll, put simply, always be outclassed by things like Blight, due to his lack of mobility and an over-reliance on RNG for his zombies. I play him every game. Crazy concept, I know, as the Nemesis guy. But as Nemesis, people give up in over 40% of my games. Wild, right? Survivor is undeniably strong at the moment. Perhaps not the strongest it's ever been, with perk creep and base mechanics being added over the years, but in 40% of matches against a mid-tier killer, someone quits. It's like playing Russian roulette with 2 bullets in the chamber. I'm not gonna lie to you. It sucks. I fundamentally disagree with the direction that the game is balanced around people that don't know what they're doing, instead of actually offering resources to teach these players on how to actually deal with things that they might not run into super often. Just quit against the twins you see once in a blue moon, because why bother learning how to deal with it? It just feels like, as a community, there's no drive from the developers to actually make people improve at their game. And I know this is a buzzword at this point, but a lot of updates are hand-holding for survivors. To a point. Changes like the addition of base kit borrowed time at a time when not bringing the perk was literally trolling, that's completely fine. It removes over-reliance on having to bring the specific perk. But changing the effects of the base kit borrowed time to be 15 seconds in a PTB that they wanted it to be 30, or setting hook stages to 70 seconds instead of 60, those are changes that are so inherently biased that I don't even know what the mindset behind them was. And the funniest part about those changes that are so inherently game breaking is that nobody was asking for them, not even survivors. Like, survivors would ask for a single extra loop or a pallet on maps with a big dead zone in the middle with nothing there. And then the pallet density update hits, and all of a sudden every map has 20 pallets, which is a severe overcorrection. And now I already know that I'm going to get a lot of comments about this. Well, horceror, aren't you a killer-only player? How would you know what... I still have more hours on Survivor than killer. So I get it, trust me. A lot of people disagree with strategies on the other side. See the previous us versus them stuff, but a lot of the time these people just don't play the other side at all. And it's hard to have a perspective on a box when you're inside the box. And now I could be a dickhead about it, and believe me, a lot of the time I want to be, but I implore these people that only play one side to maybe try to open your mind a little bit to the fact that other people have different experiences than you, and maybe their experiences matter more on things that you have not personally experienced. For example, I think I have a pretty good idea of Nemesis by now. So it annoys me when I get someone saying, actually, I know more about him than you do, so... And this happens more likely than you'd think. I mainly see this thing where people are talking on things that they have no knowledge of, but especially when there's discussion on the Go Next epidemic. People will crawl out of every nook and cranny to say something along the lines of, well, I play Dead by Daylight for 5 games a month, and I never get anyone giving up, so clearly you must be doing something wrong. This is just discounting other people's experiences. I have no doubt that people do play their games and never run into a DC, but it adds nothing to the conversation, you know? I don't think that I could be a game developer for something as big as Dead by Daylight, don't get me wrong, but a lot of my frustrations with the game are around how changes are made with it, and how bugs are left unfixed for months or years, and how things that actively ruin the experience aren't addressed. They remove going next on hook, but they leave chalk pouch offerings in the game to let you do it anyway. And even if you don't bring a chalk pouch, you can just leave the game for free with the mindset of, oh, it's fine because there'll be a bot. And these same players that quit like every other game will still express discontent towards killer players that don't like it when survivors DC, all with a wholly negligible penalty as long as you don't quit every single game. And this penalty has no real repercussions outside of the minor inconvenience to the person doing it, while making sure everyone else in the game you quit has a worse time. Not everyone just wants to win games. Like, sometimes I want to play against real people and have fun. But this type of treatment by the developers towards these players, the hand-holding that we bring up a few times and quite often in the community, is like, there's a lack of a carrot and a stick. And this mindset has fostered a community that has, by design, begun to lack the element of sportsmanship that I've been talking about. There is no GG because of personal feeling, rather than what it was meant to be and what a good game really stands for. Because playing against bots is boring. Playing with bots is boring. And if I actually wanted to do that, I would just go into custom games on my own. I do think that introducing bots for players that disconnect is a step in the right direction, but it's another case of behavior doing one step the right way, but they don't pave the sidewalk first. In essentially every other multiplayer game, if you disconnect due to your internet going out, or you need to reconnect for some reason, there's usually a system in place where you can't just queue for another game. Once you relaunch, the bot is merely holding your spot until you come back, and your option is to either A, rejoin the game, or B, take the abandon penalty. And the penalty will usually last at least until that game is over. This is an incredibly sensible system, and it makes you wonder why there isn't a system like that in Dead by Daylight. This made much more sense in the fog before bots, as survivors completely disappeared from the trial, and there was no body that they could come back to. It would be a bit funky if they just spawned back in after they reconnected, but now that bots are a thing, maybe it's finally time to catch up to modern times with the option to reconnect. It is now 3 FAB, or fog after bots, so I figure it's time to ask things like, is it just impossible to put in at this point because the game is so old? Same things with like a replay system for games, just because the game wasn't initially designed with one in mind. A lot of modern game aspects simply don't exist in Dead by Daylight. And after all these years, even with us getting Jason, a massive license, the negatives are starting to stack up for the general experience, for me at least. Nearly 0 killers are unbugged at some level, which is crazy considering there's over 40, but some of them have been bugged for years, nearing on the point of unplayability. Some get bugs that treat them positively, like my own killer, the Nemesis, who has sound cues that don't work, visual indicators that don't work, animations that don't work, zombies that don't work, and he can just also kind of hit through walls sometimes. I still don't really know how that works at all, but it does. You can sort of just tell that Dead by Daylight doesn't really have any serious competition to it. And this lack of competition is telling. While there isn't necessarily a stick for the player base, there also isn't a carrot. Basic psychology shows us that if you want to address or improve a behavior, you would give out a little bit of a treat for a positive behavior. While Dead by Daylight does have a Kudo or report system, it doesn't really do anything. It's mostly placebo, and it's hidden behind 2 clicks, which it doesn't sound like a lot, but for something that does nothing, why would I go out of my way for it? If there was a way to actually give kudos to players with meaningful rewards, it would lessen the aggression from always feeling like you're pitted against the other side, instead of all being in the same pool of Dead by Daylight player. Even offering something as simple post-match as a single click to give someone a thumbs up, maybe even offering iridescent shards or something along those lines, would assuage some community tensions for the whole us versus them behavior. Right now, you do have to click twice, it doesn't do anything, and basic math says 2 is more than 1. And hiding the action of being kind, even with how minimal it is, does do its part among the hundreds of different puzzle pieces making up the puzzle of how the Dead by Daylight community acts. Commending players in these other games is incredibly easy, like Marvel Rivals, Deadlock, Overwatch even. All of them have this end-of-game commendation system, and it's incredibly accessible. I'm not saying it would be perfect, but I'm actually reminded a lot of Overwatch and how it was kind of stagnating as a game before Marvel Rivals came out. There was no real drive to actually improve the game or the community because every direct competitor to it just shot their own foot off. It feels like the game, Dead by Daylight, is driven by licenses and Stockholm Syndrome rather than actually improving the experience. And we even took time off of content chapters to try and do an Operation Health chapter, and it just kind of didn't really do anything. So, GG. Good game. It's a little bit of a double entendre. Is Dead by Daylight a good game? I think it has something that no other game has ever had to this level. For better and for worse, DBD is the Fortnite of horror. It just gets to a point where after 10 years of no real competition, the wear and tear is starting to show. A lot. Like Springtrap's body rotting in his animatronic suit, his essence flowing out of it. Kind of like how players that are good sports have flowed out Dead by Daylight. I hope that the essence of the GG isn't missed though. I want what's best for this game. It's my most played game ever by a significant margin, more than double the next one, and it sucks a lot to see the community tear each other apart because there's nothing from the developers actually trying to teach anyone or lead people towards being better to one another. A majority of the learning takes place outside of the game, and while it does get a little bit better over time, the progress is moving at a snail's pace. As I mentioned earlier, I haven't played Dead by Daylight in a good bit outside of doing Jerikai Games' charity tournament on Pufflip's invitation, and I think it'll probably stay that way for a little bit. The 10-year anniversary of Dead by Daylight is happening in Montreal here soon, and I hope that it'll actually make sweeping changes that'll wow me as a player and as a creator, but being honest, I'm not going to hold my breath because I might pass out. I love Dead by Daylight. That's a big part of why I want it to be better than it is. I bring up this point a lot when people quit out of games that I played. If it gets to the point that I'm not enjoying a game, I would stop playing it. And, well, that's kind of what's happening. DBD isn't an abusive ex like League of Legends or something, more so of one that's unintentionally negligent. And unless actual changes are made instead of empty promises, it's healthy to take breaks and, for lack of a metaphor, play games that I actually enjoy wholeheartedly instead of taking a spin on the Russian roulette with 2 bullets to see if I die or not. It's cool when I live, yeah, but I rather enjoy actually being able to play matches out instead of, just having a notably worse time 40% of the time. Maybe it won't feel the same as before, but sometimes all you can do is say GG. Good game.